At 9 o'clock that night, my son called for the third time. I answered with one hand resting on the pillow I had pulled from a trash bin 3 hours earlier. A streak of buttercream marked one corner. Gold tissue paper was still caught beneath the mismatched brown button from Tom's old flannel shirt. "Mom, please tell me you brought it home." I did. Evan released a breath. Traffic hummed behind him. He was in his car. The place he went when he could not bear to bring a hard conversation through his own front door. "Is it damaged?" "Nothing I can't clean." Then his voice dropped. What was inside it? That was the question. Not why Claire had mocked a gift made from his dead father's shirt. Not why he had watched her drop it into a bin while their friends recorded. He wanted to know what Ruth had told him after I left. I looked down at the pillow. 4 months of work, 20 years of Tom's life, a final letter, a bank key, and the beginning of something Tom had prepared for a grandson he would never meet. Before I answer, I said, "Tell me whether you recognized the shirt." Evan did not pretend. The second she opened the box, I pictured him at the shower. He had noticed the brown button I used after he tore off the original as a boy. He had seen the patch at the elbow and the old chest pocket. His face changed. He took half a step toward Claire. Then he saw Lauren's phone, Barbara's expression, and a room waiting to see whether he would spoil the joke. He stopped. "I was going to speak to her later," he said. "You had something to say in the room." "I know." His answer sounded tired rather than defensive. That mattered, but it did not undo anything. I cleaned another spot from the flannel. My fingers had stiffened in the evening cold, and the cloth slipped once before I caught it. "If Ruth had told you there was no money, no key, and no document inside this pillow, would you have called 3 times? He was quiet long enough to answer me. "I don't know." "Then don't ask me about the contents yet." He began to cry. I could hear him trying to keep it small. "Mom, I'm sorry. I believe you feel sorry. We will talk about what happened. But not until you can name what you did without using the secret to make it important." He did not argue. I sat at the kitchen table with Tom's shirt against my palm and listened to my son breathe. I loved Evan. I also knew that rescuing him from this discomfort would repeat the mistake I had made for years. To understand why he recognized his father's shirt and still chose silence, you need to know what that shirt had carried before it became a pillow. For that, I have to go back a little more than 6 months. A little more than 6 months earlier, Tom was still alive. By then, we no longer spoke as if time were an unlimited resource. The doctors lowered their voices around us. Tom listened, nodded, and asked whether anyone had watered the tomatoes. That was how he handled fear. He found one ordinary task and gave it his attention. Claire was about 10 weeks pregnant when we told him. Tom closed his eyes when he heard the news. Then he smiled. "A grandbaby," he whispered. "About time." He began making plans immediately. Fishing trips, bad jokes, the proper age to teach a child how to bait a hook. He told Evan to save his old tackle box because a boy ought to inherit at least one thing that smells terrible. We laughed because Tom wanted us to. After Evan left, Tom watched the door for a moment. "He still tries to keep everybody happy," he said. "He hates choosing sides." "Sometimes there is a right side," Tom replied. Then he asked me to raise his bed and let the subject go. Later, when the room was quiet, he admitted what we both knew. "I'm not going to meet him. Am I, Evie?" "No," I said. After 43 years together, he could hear a false promise before I finished making it. His flannel shirt hung over the hospital chair that day. Blue and brown checks, softened by more than 20 years of washing. Tom had worn it on Evan's first fishing trip. One button near the center was brown instead of blue. Evan had torn off the original while climbing over Tom's lap in the truck. And I had replaced it with the closest match in my sewing tin. Tom teased me about that button for 28 years. At one elbow was a narrow patch from the afternoon he caught the sleeve on our backyard fence. The chest pocket had carried bait receipts, grocery lists, baseball tickets, and once, a plastic dinosaur Evan had asked him to keep safe. In our last family photograph, Tom wore that shirt beneath his canvas jacket. A week before he died, he asked me to bring him the key to our safe deposit box. Inside were United States savings bonds he had purchased a little at a time for almost 29 years. They came from bonuses, good months, and money he chose not to spend on himself. They were registered to Thomas Carter or Evelyn Carter, because Tom had prepared for the possibility that I would have to finish what he started. There was also the first savings bond he had bought, worth $100, a sealed letter addressed to our first grandchild, a spare key, and a typed inventory of everything in the box. I stared at the dates. You started this when Evan was 11. Figured there might be another little Carter someday. He did not tell me the total value. He only said it was enough to give the child a meaningful beginning. Money in an account can turn into a number, he said. Numbers are easy to spend and easier to forget. Put the beginning of it inside something the boy can touch. His eyes moved to the flannel shirt. Use that one. Evan knows that shirt. Someday the boy will, too. After Tom died, I left his closet untouched. On the worst nights, I held the flannel against my chest and pressed my face to the collar. Where the faint smell of cedar still lingered, cutting it felt impossible. One morning, I took the shirt to my sewing table. Keeping it untouched had begun to feel less like preservation and more like fear. I wanted Noah to know it as something used and loved, not as an object sealed inside my closet. So I began. I separated the sleeves and saved every usable piece. I centered the buttons on the front, preserved the pocket, and left the mismatched button exactly where it was. I used cream cotton for the back and added a hidden zipper so the cover could be cleaned. It was not for the crib. It was meant for the rocking chair. For the long nights when someone would hold Noah and wish Tom were there. My hands fought me through every seam. Arthritis made the scissors heavy and the needle stubborn. Some days I completed only an inch. Still, I worked. Inside the lining, I made a protected pocket. Into it went the first bond, Tom's sealed letter, the spare key, and the inventory. Nearly 4 months later, I closed the final seam. When I turned the pillow over, my fingers brushed the old chest pocket. Beneath its original lining was a row of stitches I did not recognize. I had repaired that shirt many times, but I had never sewn those stitches. The shower did not create the trouble in our family. It exposed a pattern we had practiced for years. Claire had not been born shallow, and I do not say that to excuse her. Barbara raised her alone through the hardest years. They lived in apartments where the heat failed in January. Claire wore second-hand coats, discount shoes, and one red dress to 3 different dances because it was the only formal thing she owned. Children can be merciless about poverty. Claire learned early that people often notice what you lack before they notice who you are. Years later, Barbara married a successful contractor and entered a life of country club lunches, polished kitchens, and people who said, casual, while wearing shoes that cost more than her first car. She adapted quickly. She began treating newness as proof of safety and expensive things as evidence that no one could humiliate them again. She taught Claire the same lesson. Barbara taught Claire to use labels as armor. If the house, clothes, and parties looked expensive enough, no one could make them feel poor again. By the time Claire married Evan, that fear had become so polished it looked like taste. Their house was beautiful, but nothing in it seemed allowed to age. Furniture was replaced before the fabric softened. The nursery was worse. Cream walls, sage curtains, gold lettering above the crib. Every item on the registry belonged to a brand Claire could name without checking. She called it curated, and I understood that the room was not only for Noah. It was proof that she had built the kind of life no childhood classmate could laugh at. Evan saw the pressure beneath it. I believe he did. My son was not cruel. He was affectionate, dependable, and the first-person neighbors called when something broke. But conflict frightened him. When two people he loved disagreed, he tried to make the discomfort disappear rather than decide what was right. He postponed difficult conversations and softened other people's words. He mistook the absence of shouting for proof that everyone was fine. When Claire hurt me, Evan usually translated her words into something easier to forgive. When she called my Christmas table a little dated, Evan said she meant traditional. When Barbara rewrote half their wedding plans without asking, he said she was excited. When Claire donated the stocking I had sewn for him as a child, he told me she had assumed it belonged in an old holiday box. "Mom, she didn't mean it that way," became his favorite sentence. And mine was worse. "It's all right. Don't make trouble over me." I said it because I loved him and did not want his marriage to become a fight over every careless remark. I also said it because asking for less had become a habit of my own. The result was not kindness. Evan learned that Claire's anger required immediate attention, while my hurt could be postponed because I would eventually forgive him. That realization did not excuse him, but it placed one loose thread in my own hand. The invitation to the baby shower arrived on heavy cream cardstock. A couple's celebration for Claire, Evan, and baby Noah. It read in gold lettering. Barbara was hosting at her home, and Lauren Pierce would film the gift opening for Claire's social pages. I should have been uneasy. Instead, I was hopeful. The pillow was wrapped in plain cream paper with a blue ribbon. I imagined Claire opening it, Evan recognizing his father's shirt, and the room growing quiet for the right reason. I imagined showing them the hidden pocket and telling them Tom had planned for a grandson he would never meet. Ruth came by the night before and studied the package on my table. "You should warn Evan there's something important inside," she said, "just so nobody handles it carelessly. Tom wanted them to discover it." I told her, "I'll explain before they take it home." Ruth frowned but did not argue. What I did not see was the message Lauren sent Claire that same evening. "Do you still want me to keep recording during the homemade gift?" Claire answered with a laughing emoji. The laughing emoji was Claire's only answer. Lauren kept the message. I would not see it until after the shower. By Sunday afternoon, Barbara's house no longer looked like a home. It looked like a product launch. A cream and sage balloon arch framed the fireplace. White flowers covered every table, and gold letters on the wall announced Noah Carter as if he already had a publicist. The gift table glittered with expensive boxes. Lauren moved through the room with her phone raised, recording everything. I sat beside Ruth near the end of the sofa, holding my plain cream box across my knees. Claire opened gifts beneath the balloon arch while Barbara supplied commentary. A French diaper bag, an Italian stroller, organic cashmere sleepers. Each brand was named for the camera before the giver was thanked. Evan stood behind Claire's chair, smiling when expected. Once, he looked at my box and then at me. His expression held the same quiet unease I had mistaken for helplessness many times before. I smiled back. I still believed the pillow might bring Tom into the room in a way grief had not allowed. Then Barbara lifted my package. "And this one is from Grandma Evelyn." Claire glanced at Lauren before pulling away the blue ribbon. The paper opened. Tom's faded blue and brown flannel appeared, remade into a square pillow, its old buttons running down the center. For 1 second, no one spoke. "I made it from Tom's favorite shirt," I said. "The pillow is for the rocking chair, not the crib." I leaned forward, wanting them to understand. So whoever holds Noah during those long nights can feel as if Tom is sitting beside them. Evan's smile disappeared. His eyes found the mismatched brown button among the blue ones, then the narrow repair at the elbow and the chest pocket I had preserved. I watched memory cross his face, a small boy beside a lake. Tom kneeling behind him, both hands guiding a fishing rod. Evan knew exactly which shirt it was. His hand lifted slightly. Claire held the pillow by two corners, careful not to press it against her dress. "It's sentimental," she said, "but we're not putting used clothing in the nursery." Barbara tilted her head. "It could go in a memory box. Perhaps." I opened my mouth to explain the hidden pocket. Claire looked directly into Lauren's phone. "Designer nursery only." Then she dropped the pillow into the tall white bin beside her chair. It landed among tissue paper, ribbon, and a paper plate carrying a streak of buttercream. Barbara laughed first. Lauren laughed by reflex, though the sound broke off almost immediately. Two younger women followed with thin, uncertain laughs. An older woman near the window said, "Claire, no." Several guests lowered their phones. Someone stared into her drink. The room did not find the moment funny. It simply did not know how to stop what had already happened. Evan stepped forward. "Claire, wait." She turned toward him. Lauren's camera turned with her. Barbara's expression tightened, warning him not to spoil the celebration. Evan looked at his father's shirt in the bin. Then his mouth closed. That hurt more than the fall. He had recognized the button. He had remembered the lake. He knew what his father had worn and what my hands had done. Still, he chose the comfort of the room over the person who had brought the gift. Ruth began to rise. "Evelyn, you need to tell them." I caught her wrist and shook my head. If I announced the hidden documents, the room would react to the money and forget the choice Claire had made before she knew about it. She already knew the pillow came from Tom's shirt. She knew I had made it for Noah. That should have been enough. I crossed the room. No one tried to stop me as I reached into the bin. A strip of gold paper had caught beneath the brown button. I pulled it free. I wiped buttercream from the corner with my napkin and held the pillow against my chest. Claire shifted in her chair. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I think I should take this home," I said. Claire started another explanation, then stopped when no one supported it. I looked at Evan. He could not meet my eyes. "Congratulations to both of you," I said. "I hope Noah arrives safely." Then I thanked Barbara for hosting, took my coat, and walked out without asking anyone to follow me. I closed the front door behind me and walked to my car before I let my hands shake. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Ruth turned to Evan. "Your father's last letter was inside that pillow," she said. Evan stared at the empty bin. Ruth's voice lowered. "And the key to what he saved for Noah." The silence between Evan and me lasted until the traffic behind him faded. He must have closed his car windows because when he spoke again, I could hear every unsteady breath. I recognized Dad's shirt the moment she opened the box. He said, "The brown button, the patch." I knew. I rested my hand on the pillow. "Then why didn't you say anything?" I told myself I would talk to Claire afterward. I didn't want to embarrass her in front of her friends. I thought keeping the room calm was the kind thing. Calm for whom? He had no answer. "I chose it, Mom," he finally said. "I chose letting you be humiliated because making my wife uncomfortable felt worse in that moment. I don't know what that says about me. It says you have something to face." His voice cracked. "Please tell me what was inside." This time, I did. Your father's final letter to Noah was in the lining. So was the first $100 savings bond he bought. The spare key to our safe deposit box. And an inventory of everything stored there. Evan went silent again. "The rest of the bonds were never inside the pillow," I continued. "The originals are secure at the bank. Tom registered them legally in his name or mine. And I verified the records after he died. The inventory listed purchase dates, serial numbers, registration, maturity status, and the location of every original bond. Some had reached final maturity. Others were still earning interest." "How much?" "As of the last valuation, $47,318. A broken sound came through the phone. I almost let her throw away everything Dad left Noah. "No," I said. "Listen carefully. The money is safe. The original records are safe. Even the letter and key are here on my table. But I thought they were in the pillow. The money is not the part I'm asking you to grieve. He began crying openly. The money is safe, I repeated. The letter is safe. What worries me is your habit of asking other people to carry pain. You do it so you can avoid discomfort. For a while, I listened to my son weep in the parked car. I wanted to reassure him. Instead, I waited until he could speak clearly. Then he said, "Even if the pillow had been empty, I still failed you." That was the first time he separated his failure from the value of the hidden documents. "Yes," I answered, "you did. I'm sorry." "I believe you're sorry. What matters now is what you do with it." He went home to Claire. He told me later that she was waiting in their kitchen, furious that he had walked out of the shower. When he explained the letter, the key, and the bonds, her face drained of color. Then fear became anger. "How was I supposed to know?" she demanded. "Who puts a key in a pillow? Your mother watched me embarrass myself and said nothing. This feels like a setup." Evan felt his oldest reflex rise, calm her, soften the facts, promise that no one blamed her. This time, he did not obey it. "You weren't supposed to know about the money," he said. "You were supposed to know how to treat my mother." Claire stared at him as if he had changed languages. "I made a joke." "You planned a joke using my dead father's shirt and my mother's grief." "That isn't fair." What happened to her wasn't fair. Claire left the kitchen. Evan did not follow her. He sat alone and allowed the house to remain uncomfortable. The next morning, I called Elena Brooks, an estate planning attorney Tom and I had consulted years earlier. "I need help verifying a group of savings bonds," I told her. "I also need tax guidance and a trust established for my grandson." "Has something happened?" "Yes, but I don't want anger at his parents to become a punishment for the child." Elena arranged a meeting and recommended that a certified public accountant review the interest and tax consequences. She also explained that an independent fiduciary could protect Noah's future without placing control in any family member's hands. After the call, I returned to the pillow. I needed to inspect the letter and key before meeting Elena, so I opened the protected lining with my seam ripper. Everything I had placed there remained dry and undamaged. As I lifted Tom's letter to Noah, my fingers brushed the old shirt pocket. I remembered the unfamiliar stitches I had noticed months earlier. This time, I cut them. Inside was a small sealed envelope I had never seen. On the front, in Tom's handwriting, were 2 words. "For Evan." The envelope addressed to Evan remained sealed on my kitchen table for 3 days. Tom had hidden it inside his own shirt. Beneath stitches he must have sewn when his hands were already weakening. But the name on the front was not mine, and whatever Tom had written belonged to our son. So I placed it with the other documents and took everything to Elena Brooks. Elena brought in Marcus Hill, a certified public accountant who understood savings bonds. She also recommended Diane Keller, an independent professional fiduciary. They verified the serial numbers, current values, registration, and maturity dates. The mature bonds would be redeemed through the treasury process. Marcus calculated the taxable interest. Elena prepared the trust so the remaining eligible bonds and the net proceeds could be transferred without giving any relative direct control. The trust allowed payments for college, vocational training, unusual medical needs, and limited help with a first home after Noah reached adulthood. Diane would review every request. The trust could not be pledged as collateral or used for routine household bills. Evan could not withdraw money. Claire could not. Neither could I. I paid the legal and accounting fees from my savings. Any tax due on redemption would be documented before the balance entered the trust. Noah would receive what Tom intended, without becoming collateral damage in an argument between adults. 10 days after the shower, before the final signatures were complete, Noah arrived 2 weeks early. He was 7 pounds of outrage, red-faced and furious at the delivery room. When the nurse placed him in Claire's arms, He made the exact stubborn frown Tom used whenever a bolt would not turn. For one breath, grief and joy occupied the same place inside me. "There you are," I whispered. "Your grandfather has been waiting for you." The first days softened everyone. Claire stopped caring whether her robe matched the nursery. Evan changed diapers, warmed bottles, and walked the hallway at 2 in the morning with Noah against his chest. He was a devoted father. But devotion did not erase what remained unresolved between him and his wife. I visited when invited. I brought food, washed dishes, and left before exhaustion became resentment. I never used Noah as leverage. And I never threatened to take him away. I told them both, I will never compete for access to Noah. But I will not accept humiliation as the price of loving him. Evan understood. Claire listened without answering. A week later, Lauren contacted Evan. She admitted that she had posted part of the shower video to her Instagram story while the party was still happening. Several viewers had screen recorded it before Claire ordered her to delete it. Lauren had kept the original because guilt would not let her erase the only complete record of what happened. She sent Evan the file. The public clip began when Claire opened my gift. The original began 11 minutes earlier. The first 11 minutes changed the meaning of the public clip. Before the guests gathered, Claire pointed Lauren toward my wrapped box and told her to keep recording if I brought another homemade gift. She even named the designer nursery joke she planned to use. Lauren asked if she was serious. Claire said it would be funny. Then guests entered the frame. And Claire put on the bright, gracious expression she used for an audience. Evan watched the video twice. The second time, he did not look away when his own silence appeared on the screen. He did not post it or send it around the family. Posting it would turn another family wound into content. But he saved the original in 2 secure places so Claire could not later reduce the event to one impulsive joke made under pressure. When he told me, I felt something colder than anger. The laughing emoji from the night before the shower had not been harmless. Claire had anticipated my handmade gift and prepared to use it as material. She could not have known about the money. But she had known enough to plan my embarrassment. We needed to discuss it in private. With the full recording available if Claire tried to call the incident spontaneous. I invited Evan, Claire, Barbara, and Ruth to Sunday dinner. I told them I wanted to give Noah his grandfather's gift properly and discuss what would happen next. I did not tell them about Lauren's full recording. I did not tell Evan about the envelope bearing his name. The night before dinner, I cooked Tom's favorite pot roast and set the dining table with the blue dishes we had used for 43 years. Then I placed the pillow on the empty chair beside me. Its lining remained open. The sealed letters rested inside. I touched the uneven seam where Tom had hidden his final words. I wondered whether I was preparing to repair my family, or admit that it had held together only because no one challenged the strain. They arrived at 6. Ruth came first and helped carry the pot roast to the table. Evan arrived next with Noah asleep in a portable bassinet. Claire and Barbara came in together a few minutes later. We placed the bassinet beside Evan's chair. The pillow rested on Tom's empty chair. Claire noticed it immediately. Evan noticed the envelope beside my plate with his name written across the front. "We'll eat first," I said. So we did. The meal was painfully polite. Ruth asked about Noah. There was no shouting, but tension sat among us like another guest. When the plates were cleared, I moved the pillow onto the table. I want to give Noah his grandfather's gift properly. I opened the lining and removed each item slowly. First came Tom's original $100 savings bond. Then the sealed letter addressed to Noah for his 18th birthday. Next came the spare key to the safe deposit box. Finally, I unfolded the typed inventory showing the bond's current value, $47,318. Claire went pale. Barbara leaned forward. Who will be managing that money? An independent professional fiduciary, I said. The trust has been established for Noah's education, vocational training, extraordinary medical needs, and limited help toward a first home when he is grown. None of us can withdraw from it. Barbara looked toward Evan. Not even his father? Not even his father. I turned to Claire. The money still belongs to Noah. It never belonged to you or Evan. What changed is that an independent trustee will make the decisions. Evan met my eyes. She's right. Claire's hands tightened beneath the table. I didn't know what was inside. Evelyn should have warned us. Everyone is using one mistake to judge my entire character. The hidden documents are beside the point. I said, you knew it was Tom's shirt. And you knew I had made it for Noah. It was an impulsive joke. Evan reached for his phone. No, Claire said immediately. He placed the phone on the table and played Lauren's original recording. We watched Claire adjust her hair before the shower and say, if she brings another homemade thing, keep filming. I might do the designer nursery bit. Lauren asked whether she was serious. Then Claire's recorded voice answered, it'll be funny. Evan stopped the video before the pillow entered the frame. We already knew the rest. Claire stared at the dark screen. Barbara straightened in her chair. Claire was under enormous pressure. She wanted one day to go well. She did not hate Tom. I said, she was afraid an old shirt would make her look ordinary. And you spent years teaching her that ordinary was dangerous. Barbara's face hardened, then changed. For once, no defense followed. I picked up the envelope addressed to Evan. I found this inside the original shirt pocket. Your father hid it there before he died. I have not opened it. Evan's fingers shook as he broke the seal. He tried to read silently. But his eyes stopped moving after the first lines. Please, he whispered, you read it. He handed me the letter. I recognized Tom's blunt handwriting. Evan, I read, you have always been gentle. And I have always loved that in you. But silence becomes cowardice when it asks someone else to carry the pain for you. Evan lowered his head. Tom wrote that courage did not require shouting. It meant speaking plainly even when someone he loved became disappointed or angry. He reminded Evan of the times he had avoided a decision and called the delay peace. The final line was simple. You have a good heart. Son, learn to use your voice. Love, Dad. Evan covered his face. I folded the letter but did not move toward him. There was one truth left that belonged to me. I taught you to be kind, Evan, but every time you avoided a hard truth. I called it kindness because that was easier for me. 2. I told you not to make trouble over me. I helped you become quiet. He looked up. I am sorry, I said. Claire pushed back her chair. So this was a trial, she said, and everyone had evidence prepared except me. No, I answered. This was a private dinner. We brought the recording because you kept calling the joke spontaneous. She looked at Evan, waiting. His body moved before his judgment did. He stood, took one step after her, then stopped. Claire left without apologizing. The front door closed hard enough to shake the hallway frame. Evan stood between the hallway and the table. His first instinct was visible in his face. Then Noah stirred in the bassinet. And Evan returned to his chair instead of following Claire. He did not look relieved. He looked frightened. But he stayed. The morning after dinner, Evan wrote separately to each person who had attended the shower. What happened to my mother was cruel. His message said, I stood there and allowed it because I was afraid of conflict. That was my failure. Please do not share or repost the video. He did not call Claire a monster or make her carry his portion of the blame. He named his own silence without dressing it as confusion. Then he found an individual counselor. He asked Claire to join him in marriage counseling, not as a condition for forgiveness, but because their old way of managing conflict had become impossible to defend. His hardest conversation was with Barbara. You cannot manage our marriage, he told her. You cannot use gifts, money, or favors to control our decisions. And Noah will not be taught that someone's value can be measured by what they own. Barbara called him ungrateful. Evan let her be angry. Claire's first apology arrived by text 4 days later. I'm sorry you were hurt. But I truly didn't know what was inside. I read it twice before answering. You are still explaining why you should not be blamed. I wrote. The money was not the reason your choice hurt me. She did not respond. For several weeks, I heard little from either Claire or Barbara. Then Ruth told me Barbara had found a small yellow dress while cleaning a closet. Claire had worn it when she was 6. During the years when Barbara could barely afford groceries. Barbara had preserved it for 3 decades because it held a memory no new dress could replace. She had taught her daughter to feel ashamed of old things while privately treasuring one herself. Barbara did not offer me a complete apology. She was not ready, but she stopped explaining Claire's behavior to everyone else. For Barbara, that was a noticeable change. Claire's change was slower and less visible. She began counseling. She stopped posting Noah every day and removed the phone from family meals. She researched memory pillows and read stories from people who had turned a parent's clothing into something their children could hold. At a community donation center, she volunteered to sort clothing instead of dropping off sealed bags for someone else to handle. She learned to check pockets, read handwritten names, and ask whether an old coat might carry a history before deciding it was worthless. None of those actions erased the shower. They did show that Claire had begun examining the fear beneath her behavior. She still associated looking ordinary with being vulnerable and poor. 3 months after dinner, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Claire had written it by hand. What I did was cruel before I knew what was inside the pillow. The money did not make it valuable. It only exposed how badly I had judged it. And you. I insulted Tom's memory, embarrassed Evan, and turned Noah's inheritance into material for a joke. I am sorry for what I chose to do. I understand if you cannot trust me yet. There was no but. I appreciated the letter. I did not treat it as proof that trust had been restored. I called Claire and invited her to my house. When she arrived, I had placed the pillow on the kitchen table. Its lining remained open from the night I removed Tom's letters. Beside it lay a needle, blue thread, small scissors, and my silver thimble. Claire stopped in the doorway. I thought you might want to finish it, I said. Her eyes filled. I don't know how. I know. I pulled out the chair opposite mine. You opened a wound in this family. I'm not asking you to repair all of it today. Start with this seam. She sat down. I showed her how to thread the needle, not the end, and bring it through from beneath so the knot would remain hidden. I guided her with words but kept my hands in my lap. Claire pushed the needle through the old flannel. Her fingers trembled. The point emerged too far from the folded edge, and the first stitch crossed the fabric at an awkward angle. She looked at me, waiting for me to take over. I did not. Again, I said gently, this time, much slower. Claire stared at the crooked stitch for a long time. Then she reached for the scissors. No, I said, use the seam ripper. Cutting the thread is quick. But you might cut the fabric with it. She removed the stitch carefully, drew the thread back through the flannel, and tried again. The second stitch was straighter. The third was smaller. By the 6th, her shoulders had lowered and she was no longer holding her breath. We worked across several afternoons. My hands tired easily, and Claire needed time to become comfortable making mistakes without abandoning the work. While we sewed, Claire began asking questions. Why is this button brown? Evan pulled off the blue one climbing over Tom in the truck. It was the closest match in my sewing tin. And this patch? Tom caught his sleeve on our fence and insisted the fence had attacked him. She smiled, then touched the chest pocket. Was this the shirt from the fishing photograph? Yes. Evan caught his first fish that day. Tom told everyone it weighed 10 pounds. It barely weighed 2. Claire had stopped inspecting the shirt for flaws. She was listening for the family history attached to each mark. When we reached the final inches, I showed her how to hide the knot beneath the lining. A seam is not where fabric is weakest, I told her. Done properly, it is where two separate pieces decide to hold. She looked at the uneven row we had made together. Will it hold? If we treat it carefully. 6 months after the shower, I agreed that the pillow could go home. There was no ceremony. Claire did not place it in Noah's crib, where pillows did not belong. She set it on the rocking chair, where I had intended it to rest. No phone recorded the moment. No one announced a brand. Before taking it over, I slipped a photograph into Tom's preserved shirt pocket. In it, Tom wore the flannel and knelt beside Evan at the lake. Evan held his first fish with both hands, while Tom looked at his son instead of the camera. On the back, I wrote, "Tom wore this shirt the day you caught your first fish. He watched you instead of the camera. Tell Noah about him. Love, Mom." A few nights later, Noah woke crying after midnight. Evan lifted him from the crib and sat in the rocking chair. As he settled against the pillow, his hand brushed the old pocket. He found the photograph and studied it beneath the nursery lamp. Then he began telling Noah about Tom. He told Noah about a grandfather who drove the same truck for 19 years and exaggerated the size of every fish. Tom had bought savings bonds in small amounts long before Noah existed because he wanted the next generation to have a better start. Claire stood in the doorway. Her phone was in her hand. I saw her thumb move toward the camera icon, then stop. This time, she turned off the screen. She placed the phone on the dresser, crossed the room, and sat on the floor beside her husband and son. No one took a photograph. The moment belonged only to them. That did not mean everything was repaired. Noah's trust remained independently managed. Evan and Claire continued counseling. Barbara and I became civil, but never close. Copies of the shower video still existed beyond our control. Claire knew forgiveness had not restored every privilege. And I knew one honest season could not guarantee a lifetime of change. They were changing in ordinary, observable ways. Evan could remain present during conflict. Claire no longer treated every private family moment as something to publish. My hands are worse now. Some mornings, the needle wins. Still, when Noah visits, he reaches for the mismatched brown button and asks about the man in the picture. I tell him the truth. The money made everyone stop and look. But it was never the most important thing Tom left behind. The real inheritance appeared in the choices that followed. Evan spoke when silence would have been easier. Claire put down her phone. Both returned to work they could not finish in a single day. Tom had spent years setting aside small amounts and trusting time to increase their value. Our family changed in much the same way. No grand gesture repaired us. We placed one honest act beside another and gave the new seam time to hold.